So we'll let you take it away. And then you can share your screen too.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Let me get that. Um, oh, let's see. There it is. Share my screen again. All right. Everybody can see that now?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. So just to give you guys a little bit of introduction to me, my name's Michele McClory. I am the adult facilitator for my daughter's service dog. His name is Oaken. These are some of his baby pictures while I'm giving my introduction. We got him through an organization called Canine Companions. They're one of the largest service dog organizations in the country. We've been placing service dogs since 1975. We do regional graduations with service dog teams a couple of times a year. And our most recent graduation, we just hit a milestone with the organization by placing our 8,000th service dog with an individual with a disability. So it's pretty big accomplishment. I have my contact information at the beginning of this presentation, as well as also at the end. If you guys have any questions at all, feel free to send me an email. That's my cell phone number that's on the screen. Just to be really honest, I'm a lot better at responding to text messages. And if it is something we need to chat by phone, it's a lot easier for me if you can send me a text and then I can respond. We can pick a time to talk. Happy to chat on the phone as well. It's just a little bit difficult with the kids to be able to take unexpected calls, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with that as well. But do feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about service dogs, about canine companions. I'm happy to chat about Oaken all day, every day. He's absolutely the light of every day that we have. So I just want to go over a little bit for you. Whoops. There we go. What our presentation is going to cover today. So this is my daughter, and these are a couple of pictures from early on when we first got matched with Oaken, and then just her experience with our dog. We're going to talk today about the difference between pets, emotional support animals, ESAs, and service dogs. We're going to talk about canine companions as one path to getting a service dog, but it's certainly not the only one. So we'll cover a little bit of information about if you are interested in training your own service dog or going through another organization, some of the pros and cons of all of that, and then what the application process for canine companions looks like, since that's obviously the one that I am the most familiar with, but it's certainly not the only path to a service dog. And then since most of the people that are going to be the audience for this presentation have a loved one or are themselves autistic, I wanted to cover a little bit in detail about what kind of work can a dog perform that helps someone who's autistic. So service dogs can be trained to perform a variety of tasks that help people with all sorts of different disabilities. And we'll touch just a little bit on some of the different types of work that a dog might do elsewhere as well. But I wanted to focus this presentation specific to how a dog can help with autism. But if any questions come up that you'd like any more information, please feel free to put it in the Q&A or reach out to me separately as well. We do place dogs with a lot of different types of disabilities that people might have. So just because we're going to focus on autism in this presentation doesn't mean that we can't chat about other ways that dogs can assist as well. So the first thing, there's a big difference between an emotional support animal and a task-trained service dog. And where it really starts is what laws cover, what laws protect that dog's right to be where it is allowed to be. So there are a lot of people who interchange the terms, but they are legally different, and they have different rights and different access that the dog can have. So an emotional support animal, sometimes also called an ESA, does not have public access rights. My emotional support animal cannot go to the grocery store with me, cannot go to the library with me, cannot go to a restaurant, cannot go to school, to the hospital, to doctor's appointments. My emotional support animal is primarily a companion. It does not have to be a dog. Emotional support animals can be cats. There are some people who might have an emotional support bunny or other types of animals. Their primary purpose is companionship for the person that they're with. Emotional support animals are covered under fair housing laws. which also means that the only access rights that that animal has is with its owner in your own residence. So, for someone that owns their own home, having an emotional support animal and going through that process may not be as important unless you live in an HOA where there are restrictions as to how many animals you can have in your home. But ESAs became a pretty important part of support for people with mental health challenges. When we look at if you are in a rental situation and your landlord says, hey, we can't have pets here. Well, an emotional support animal, you can go through a process with a mental health provider that you have been working with to get a letter to present to your landlord to be able to have access into your home, your apartment, your residence with your emotional support animal. Um, there are still some rules over what the expectations for that animal would be. We would expect them to be housebroken. Just because you have a letter from your therapist saying that this is an ESA doesn't mean that the dog can defecate all over the apartment. You would still be responsible for damages. And we do expect that the animal would not be disruptive to neighbors. So we would still expect that it wouldn't be barking all day long or making a lot of noises, running out through the front door and just running all over the neighborhood. But other than that, if it's an issue where you are in a rental and your landlord says, hey, we can't allow pets here, if you do have a mental health condition where a benefit of companionship of an animal would be helpful and your therapist agrees with you, you can have an emotional support animal. There is a certification that your therapist would have to write for you. And then that grants access to that animal just in your residence. Canine Companions does not provide emotional support animals. So my expertise on what exactly those steps look like kind of end with what I just shared here. There is some information you can research on Google if that's something that would be helpful for you. But there were some laws that changed over the last couple of years where if you're seeking an emotional support animal, you do have to work with a professional that already knows you. So there was some abuse of the system where people were paying a fee to a therapist that they'd never met, and then the therapist would write them a letter, and then the landlord had to accept the ESA. It does have to be somebody that's worked with you that has some knowledge of your mental health condition, but it doesn't. It also doesn't have to raise to the level of a disability in order to have an ESA at your house. I just want to pause after that, Melissa. Were there any questions that came up in the chat? Because I can't see them while I'm sharing my screen.
Yes, there
Okay.
was. And I didn't want to stop you, but our interpreter is in there. So if you do need Spanish interpretation, I apologize for the delay. Just click on the world on the bottom and then you can switch it over to Spanish. One of the questions we have is what kind of task does a service dog help with kiddos who are autistic?
Okay, we will get to that. So that's going to come a little bit closer to the end. Were there any questions on emotional support animals before I move on from this segment?
Not at this moment. If you guys had a question, feel free to put it in the Q&A. Oh, someone wrote yes. So let me give them a
Okay.
moment to write.
Yeah.
Let me see.
Obviously, I didn't have a slide here to talk about pets. I think we're all pretty familiar with our pets can be any animal we love that don't necessarily serve a purpose other than that they're cute and cuddly and we love them. But I just want to make sure we kind of take this chunk of information about ESAs before we move on to service dogs, which are going to be the main point of our presentation.
So her question says, so does an emotion support only makes you automatically denied for a service dog?
Nope, not at all. So someone may have an ESA that's able to help them in their home, and it's just kind of that cute, cuddly, a little bit more like a pet than a service dog would be. And then they also have a service dog that goes out into public with them. And we will cover this a little bit later as well. Some people may have multiple disabilities that require the assistance of more than one animal as well. So you're not necessarily boxed into if you had a service dog that you can only have one. It is rare that someone may want to have two dogs that they're handling at the same time, working two different tasks, but it does happen on occasion. So for sure, you could have an emotional support animal as well as a service dog.
Thank you. And then that was it. You can continue and then I'll
Okay,
go with the other ones.
thank you. Okay, so um, service dogs, different than emotional support animals, they're covered under different laws. So service dogs are actually protected under the Americans with Disabilities Act, also known as the ADA. There's a couple of different parts to the ADA. Titles 2 and 3 have the language around service dogs for access in the workplace, as well as public access for anywhere that you may go as like a customer or just out and about in your daily life. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about workplace access in this presentation because it is very different than public access when we're talking about bringing our dogs anywhere that we go in our daily life. If you have a question, if you are thinking about a service dog and you want to know about taking it to your own place of employment, be a conversation with your HR department, and they would help you with Title II access under ADA to get through that process. It is still very broad, and most people who request accommodation for workplace access are given that, but there can be a few more barriers than there are to public access. Public access is when I'm just going about my daily life, being able to bring my dog with me everywhere I go. So the first part of the ADA for service dog public access laws is that they must be assisting someone with a disability. If you've ever had a service dog or you've been out with someone who's had a service dog, sometimes businesses will come up to you and they'll just say, "Is that a service dog?" And you'll say yes or no. Most of the time, if you brought your dog with you, obviously you're going to say yes because you expect to bring your dog in with you. But we're really missing at the heart of the ADA is that that dog must be assisting someone who has a disability. So my daughter's dog, Oaken, is a trained service dog. He was bred for this type of work. He's about to be 4 years old next month, and he graduated when he was just over 2. And when he graduated as a service dog, he had been training for service work for 2 full years of his life. He started training. They go through a process like pretty much the moment they're born. We're priming these dogs to be service dogs. But I am not an individual with a disability. And so if I go out in public with my daughter's dog, he does not have access to go out in public with me to places that are not dog friendly, because the first part of the ADA states that the dog has to be there to assist someone with a disability. The second part of it is that the dog must be trained in a specific task or performing some kind of work that mitigates the individual's disability. So one of the things that we can think of when we think of service dogs is a guide dog that helps someone who is blind. The dog is performing a very specific type of work for that individual to help them navigate the world around them. We may also think about mobility assistance dogs that are retrieving items for someone who may be in a wheelchair, that they drop something, the dog is able to pick that item up and give it back to its owner, or even sometimes pulling wheelchairs, those sorts of things. All of those fall under that work or task that the dog has been trained to perform that mitigates the disability. Couple of other things about our dogs. Service dogs, just because they're there with a disability, someone with a disability, and that they're performing some sort of work or task or that they've been trained to. The dog also must be housebroken, so we don't expect our service dogs to be having accidents while they're out in public. Oaken actually has a command that we use when it's time for him to go to the bathroom. I have to give him permission to go because I don't want him to be just thinking, well, everywhere I go, I can go. We want him to make sure that he's only going in places that I find appropriate for him to be going, which is different than a pet, right? When we're going out for a walk around the neighborhood, there are places where it might be okay if I had a pet that I wouldn't take my service dog to toilet. We also expect the dogs, obviously, to be obedient and under the control of their handler at all times. So if you've ever gone into a business and you've seen a dog that didn't really look like, hey, I don't know if that's actually a service dog just because they're wearing a vest, that's where that comes in. The dog does still have to be obedient to its handler and under the control of the handler at all times. Almost always that would involve having a leash or harness on the dog, but there are certain times where a service dog's work would be inhibited by that leash or harness. And so if that's the case, then the dog must be under some other type of voice control of the handler at all times. For canine companions, our dogs are always vested and leashed when they're out working. But there may be rare circumstances where you would find a service dog who is legitimately a service dog, actually performing work or task for their person, that is not leashed or harnessed at that time. But it is rare. I will take this as to just throw in the side note as well. As far as service dogs are concerned, under the ADA, there are only two types of animals that are covered under ADA public access for service work, and those would be dogs and miniature horses. I will tell you, I do not know a lot about miniature horse work. That is not something I am an expert in, but I do know that it is a part of the ADA. So if a service dog is not right for you, but you are considering a different animal, a miniature horse would be the only other one that is covered under the ADA. Cats, although they can be wonderful companion animals, do not have public access rights, even if you have trained them to perform some sort of task. Other stories that we heard over the years, on airplanes, people saying, oh, this is my service crocodile. You cannot have one under the ADA. It is a dog, and or a miniature horse. I'll stop for a second again and see if any other questions came in on this so far, Melissa.
Not at the moment, just the one from before, but we'll wait till you.
Okay. Yep. I'll still come around to that. I promise.
You're good.
Okay. So, want to talk a little bit about what makes that dog a service dog. So I went over what the public access laws are, right? And just so everybody's very clear on this, the vest that a dog is wearing has nothing to do with whether or not it's a service dog. From Canine Companions, part of my graduate agreement with them is that when Oaken is out and working, he will be vested in the Canine Companions vest that he was that he earned. He wasn't given. He earned that vest through a lot of hard work. But as far as the ADA and public access laws, you don't have to have a vest. If you are training your own service dog or you've gotten it from another organization, the dog is not required by law to wear a vest in public. So when you see people, sometimes we'll go into a restaurant and we'll be stopped and they'll say, well, his vest doesn't say service dog because it has the Canine Companions logo on it. And they'll say, well, he's not a service dog because it doesn't say service dog on it. Well, the ADA says he doesn't even have to wear a vest at all. So just for you to be aware of that. However, if you do get a service dog from an organization, you might have additional requirements from that organization that do require a vest from them, but it's not necessarily part of the ADA. I personally think the vest is really helpful to the dog so that the dog's able to differentiate, I'm working right now versus I'm off duty, right? So if you've ever had a job where you've had to wear a uniform, it feels really nice to be able to take that uniform off at the end of the day and like just kind of be free and not think that you're working anymore. Our dogs like to do that too. When they take their vest off, they know I'm not working and can have a little bit more fun right now. So it is a nice signal for them, but it's not required. And then there is no identification that's required for service dogs either. There's no registry, there's nothing, you don't have to go through any specific sort of training. So long as this is a dog that is working with someone who has a disability and the dog has been trained to perform some kind of work or task that's going to assist that person, they're covered under the ADA. The dog must be housebroken and must be obedient, but that's it. There's not. So if you go somewhere with your dog, whether you get that dog from Canine Companions or from another organization or you train it yourself, you're not going to be asked. Well, you may be asked, but there's no proof. There's no like card that you're going to be able to pull out. Sometimes people mistakenly ask for those things, and then that's an opportunity to educate them a little bit on the ADA. I covered this already just a little bit. If the dog works for your child, as in my situation, and my child's not with me at the moment, the dog does not have public access. sometimes you may still take the dog for a walk around the neighborhood or to other places that are dog friendly. But if my child's not with me and my child's the one with the disability that the dog works for, the dog doesn't have public access when my child's not there. Now, if I'm going to pick my child up from school, I may bring the dog as a support. Even though dogs aren't typically allowed at school, I'm going there so that the dog can assist my child. If I drop my child off at school, I may bring the dog with me. But then if I want to go run 3 hours worth of errands after I drop them off at school, the dog comes home and waits for me at home while I go run my errands without the dog. Are there any questions on that?
Not at the moment.
Okay. All right. So I want to share a little bit about the Canine Companions process. So we are a service dog organization that specializes in several different types of service dogs. We work with mobility assistance dogs. We work with hearing dogs for those that are deaf or hard of hearing. We provide dogs through our Veterans Initiative to individuals that may have PTSD or other anxiety or trauma related to military service. And then we also provide dogs for individuals, children, and young adults with developmental disabilities. So those would be the dogs that we're kind of focusing on in this presentation today about what sorts of assistance they may provide. From the applicant side, so that's us, right? When we're as the family saying, hey, I think a service dog would be really helpful. You can start out on the website, canine.org, and there's an online application. The first part of it is pretty brief. There's not a lot that you're going to do on that initial part of the application. But that's just the beginning step to the process. After that, takes a couple of weeks, and then you may get scheduled for a phone interview. The phone interview is going to take place. They're going to ask you a lot of things about your family, about what sorts of needs you may have from a dog. Do you have the financial means once you obtain the dog to make sure that you can provide regular veterinary care and feed the dog? Are you going to be able to exercise the dog? Our dogs do require a significant amount of exercise to make sure they stay fit and healthy. They want to know a little bit about your background. Have you ever had a dog before? Are you familiar with having a dog in your house? If you're not, that's okay. That's not a disqualifier, but it just means that they know that they're going to have to make sure during training that you get even more information about how to take care of the basic needs of a dog, because not everybody's had a pet dog growing up. And so we want to make sure when our service dogs come home that you do understand about vet care that they'll need and feeding and exercise and all of those things. After the phone interview, there may be some forms that you have to fill out, some information from doctors or therapists to just support the need. And then your next big step is going to be an in-person interview. If you're going through Canine Companions, our regional training center here is in Oceanside. If anybody's ever been down by the Mission, it's right down there by the Mission in Oceanside. So you'd go down to campus for an in-person interview. You get to meet a few dogs, not the dog that's going to be matched with your family, but you would just meet a couple of dogs that are in professional training, get to see what they're like, feel them, say hi. They're nice and fluffy and friendly. And that's also a time for Canine Companions to get a sense a little bit more of your style with the dog, because all of our dogs, although they're trained in the same commands, they all have a personality. And so we want to make sure that we're not only matching applicants with a dog that can do the work that they need them to do, but that the personality is going to be a good fit in your family too. After the in-person interview, next step is you'd end up waiting in an applicant pool. If you get passed on to the next step of that, then you're just kind of waiting. You're waiting for that perfect dog to have gone through training to be ready for your family. And then you come to team training. Team training for us also is on campus in Oceanside. It's 2 weeks. You go down there and you're going to learn everything you need to know about the dog. The dog's going to learn everything they need to know about your family to be able to go out and be a successful working team. to be able to have that public access, to know how to handle the dog. We go through a lot of different situations that you may encounter. If you have problems with public access, what do you say? Where can you go for help? Just a lot of different information on the overall health of the dog, as well as what to expect from your service dog. And then with Canine Companions, one of the great things is we have ongoing graduate support for the working life of the dog. So if you came home and within the first couple of weeks, you're saying, oh gosh, I forgot that thing from team training and I can't remember and I don't know what to do, you can contact the grad department and they'll help you out. If everything's been going great for 5 years and all of a sudden you're like, gosh, I really wish my dog, like I have this new thing that I need my dog to help with, and I don't know how to train it anymore. I forgot what I'm supposed to do because we've been a successful working team for 5 years, and I forgot team training from 5 years ago. You can still contact the grad department at any time. They're there to assist throughout the entire working life of the dog. Our dogs are provided to the individuals that need them free of charge. Canine Companions does nationwide fundraising to provide the dogs to the individuals that need them. Some other service dog organizations will expect the family to fundraise for a certain percentage of the cost of a dog. Typically, organizations will tell you it costs between $40,000 and $50,000 to train a dog from birth until the time when they're ready to be a working dog at about 2 years old. And I know some organizations that will ask for a family to fundraise, say 25% of that before they can be put on a list. Canine Companions, whether you choose to participate in fundraising or not, the applicant pool is separate from the fundraising that they do. And that working life support as a graduate is available free of charge to the families as well, regardless of if you participate in fundraising for the organization or not. So that's what's happening on the applicant side. I want to talk a little bit about what's happening on the dog side of things. All of our dogs are bred up in Santa Rosa, California. That's where our headquarters is for the country. And when they're with their volunteer breeder caretakers for about 8 weeks. So they're with their moms, doing all the cute little puppy things. And those are volunteers as well. And they all live right near campus in Santa Rosa. When they're about 8 weeks old and are mature enough to be able to be separated from mother, then they're shipped off all over the country to volunteer puppy raisers. And our volunteer puppy raisers keep those pups for about 16 to 18 months. They train them in basic commands. They're taking them out for socialization in the community. We have puppy classes that they'll attend. So they have some sort of community of people that they're raising these pups with. And the whole point, the whole purpose of what they're going through is to hopefully have that dog be ready to graduate to work with someone with a disability. And so that's at the focus of everything that they're doing. And these volunteer puppy raisers love those dogs for about a year and a half. And then they turn them back into campus for professional training. They work with one of our professional trainers for about 6 to 9 months so that then they're advancing those basic commands that they learned. So they're really ready for service work. We're testing and making sure that those skills that they've learned, that they're very sharp and that they're able to perform those tasks in a multitude of settings, regardless of how disruptive the rest of the environment is. A lot of us can see like a pet dog in our house is able to shake hands, for instance. That's a pretty common task that a lot of dogs, a lot of pets are trained to shake hands, right? It's really cute. Here's my dog, say hi, they shake a hand. Well, it's one of the things that Oaken does for my daughter is he's able to um, have those greetings, but he's able to do them consistently. So we can be in an environment where it's very loud, very noisy. We could be at an amusement park and there are thousands of people walking around. And if Oaken is asked to say hi to someone, he will shake hands regardless of what the rest of the environment looks like. So he can perform those tasks over and over and over again with consistency. And that's what we're really honing in professional training. And then for the dog as well, their last hurrah there is they get that same 2 weeks of team training where they're going to meet their forever family and the human that they're going to help um, get that greater independence for the rest of their lives. Do you have any questions here? And I promise I am coming now to some of the tasks that the dogs will be able to help with.
I do have one question. Are there requirements for housing? Would an apartment or condo be appropriate for service dogs?
Absolutely. So long as you have the ability to exercise the dog, you're not required to be in a house or to have a yard. And keep in mind, our dogs, because they are working service dogs, they're able to exercise at the mall or indoors at like if you have an indoor track at a gym or at a I can't think of the name now. Anyway, so like if you have somewhere where you can go inside and walk the dog around a lot, that's fine too. So it doesn't have to be in your yard or even in your neighborhood. Some of our individuals, and especially here, right? It gets so hot. When it's July and August, I am not bringing my dog outside for an hour-long walk every day because he can't handle that heat. But I can exercise him inside either at my house, or I can take him to walk around inside somewhere for that exercise too.
Thank you. And then I have another one that says, is there an application for financial support to help training? It's a two-part question. And is there any training location in Riverside County?
So for Canine Companions, we do not have a training facility in Riverside County. There may be some other organizations that do train dogs here locally. However, we do have volunteer puppy raisers that are out and about with our pups, training them in Riverside County. But as far as for Canine Companions, when it comes to that team training, our regional office would be in Oceanside. There's only 6 main campuses throughout the country, so we're really lucky that ours is very close to us. But then as far as applications for financial assistance, there are a couple of different ways if you have a working service dog, whether through Canine Companions or through another organization or owner trained dogs. Once they are ready for service work and they are actually a working dog that's already mastered their tasks, there are some ways that the state can help. These are specific to California. I imagine that our audience here is all in California, but just in case anybody's watching from outside of the state, or if you're here now and you move, these assistance programs may not be available to you the same way outside of the state. But the state does have a service dog fund that can help with some basic vet care or food. There are financial qualifications for it. Some of them, though, are if the applicant that has the service dog either receives SSI or IHSS, they can qualify for a service dog stipend through this state. It's not much, but it is something, it does help. Not for the training, but that would be again once the dog is already working. And then also, if yourself or your loved one that's looking for the service dog is also a regional center consumer, you may not get any assistance through the traditional model, but if you are looking at switching to self-determination, you almost likely will not get a budget increase to help with the care of your dog, but you can reallocate funding to your spending plan to help with the care, regular vet care, as well as feeding of the service dog through self-determination. That's probably a broader conversation than we have time for to really dig in. So if I said some things that you're like, hey, I've heard of self-determination before, but I don't know what, I don't want to spend a lot more time talking about that today, but feel free to reach out to me and we can talk one-on-one if you want more information about that. Anything else?
How long is the wait list to get a service dog? And is there a minimum age requirement for the client?
Sure. So for Canine Companions, it does vary. Typically, we tell people it's about 18 to 24 months from the time from that very first step, just when you're going online at canine.org until you'd be graduating with your dog is typically about 18 to 24 months. I have recently seen some families get through the process a little bit quicker, closer to about a year to 14-month mark. But we do like to say that year and a half to 2 years, just so you set your expectations. As far as the minimum age, We won't place service dogs with clients that are under age 5, just because to be able to get the real benefit from a dog, we do feel that toddlers, although our dogs are very friendly and love being around babies, they're not going to necessarily get the benefit of the working dog. Um, Other service dog organizations may have slightly different rules. And of course, if it's an owner trained dog, there's not necessarily a guideline in the ADA that says that you must be 5 to have a service dog. But you would have to be able to show that that dog is performing some sort of work or task that helps the individual that's younger than them. For canine companions, if the dog is working with a minor, we do ask that there's an adult facilitator that's handling the dog while out in public. Just because even though our dogs are really, really well trained, dogs are strong, and young kids may not be able to handle um, the dog in different situations. So we do have ways where we can work where the dog might have 2 leashes connected to their collar, so that a young child may still feel that they have some control over the dog, but really the adult is handling that dog.
Thank you. And that was the last question I had.
Okay. So now we're into the fun part. What are the tasks that these dogs can do? Really, these dogs are amazing. And I will tell you, if you can think of something that you think a dog may be capable of learning, our dogs are probably capable of doing it. For Oaken, if kibble is involved, he will do anything you tell him to do. He is extremely food motivated, as are most of our working dogs. Canine Companions only uses labs, golden retrievers, and a cross between the two. We found for the type of placements that we're making, they're the most successful for that. Even though they're service dogs, there's still that companionship aspect. They like to be in a family with their people. They're very friendly, they're loving, they're very calm temperament, and they're very, very motivated by food. And so it's easier to train them, right? So when I want Oaken to go somewhere, if I'm when I'm trying to train a new skill for him, he can literally follow a kibble anywhere. If I'm holding a kibble, he will follow me wherever I tell him to go. So, so if you can think of a task, the dog can probably be trained to do it. Just because they graduate with a set of skills that will help at 2 years old doesn't mean that's where their training ends. You can certainly advance those skills, train completely new skills. There's a lot of flexibility in what the dogs are able to learn. Couple of examples that I have here. You see my daughter and my son throughout the pictures, and this is our beautiful boy Oaken. So one of the fun like party facts that we have about him is he plays Uno with us. And so we use some simple commands that you might think of being utilized with an individual who needs mobility assistance. We can utilize some of those same commands to help with playing games. So we'll use a get command for him to get a card, and then a give so he can drop it in the pile. What we're doing with that, we're working on motivation. We're working on waiting our turn. We're working on tolerating loss. So I have 2 kids, both of them are autistic. Losing a game is really hard. Really, really hard. Losing a game to your sibling feels awful and sometimes causes behaviors that are very challenging. Losing a game to your dog is not as hard because your dog's super cute. And so we can work on those life skills of not everybody wins every game all the time. And we can work on those with Oaken. You see also he's laying across my daughter's back while we're waiting in a doctor's appointment. Um, she doesn't like waiting. I know that's going to be a big shock. I'm sure most of our family members are amazing at waiting. Well, my 2 kids are not. And so waiting's really hard, but deep pressure helps. And so Oaken's able to provide that deep pressure therapy you can see on the picture above with my son. He provides deep pressure therapy when we're in the car by either laying on their shoulders or across their lap while we're in the car. So it's easier for us to even get in somewhere. And then once we're there, if the world's a little too overwhelming, we can sit, we can lay down, we can sit in a chair, and Oaken can provide deep pressure with his with his front paws. He can lay all the way across. He can even just do, just like he's doing with my son's picture there, just with his chin and his lap is just enough to kind of help reset everything. You see another picture there. He's with my daughter. We take him when we play soccer. We do a couple of adaptive soccer teams. And he comes out. He doesn't usually go out on the field with the soccer ball, although he could. But he's there to be that support for her on the sidelines in between. Although our dogs are very, very motivated by food, they're also very well trained around food. And that's really important to my family because one of the things my kids love to do is to go out to eat. But my son specifically is not exactly the neatest eater. He eats everything with his hands, and there's a lot of food that spills, and oftentimes on the floor, right onto or right in front of my dog. And I don't want my dog eating, even from the floor, when we're in a restaurant. And I don't want my dog to get into something that might harm him or to become so focused on food when we're walking through a restaurant that he starts grabbing food from your plate while you're sitting at your table too. So our dog's rules around food are very strict. You can see the picture there with Oaken. He's looking down at something that says Oaken. That's spelled out with his kibble. And he will sit there and he will let us spell out his name with kibble and he will not touch it because he knows his rules around food and he knows he either eats from his bowl or he eats from my hand, but only if he's told he's allowed to. So he's not, even though he loves that food and he wants that. And you can even see, I don't know if you can tell, there's some drool coming down from his face. He will drool at it, but he won't go after the food on the floor. And that's super important part of our training as well. So some of the tasks you can see pictured here, deep pressure therapy, like I said, motivation to participate in different activities, tolerating loss, waiting your turn. Our dogs also really help to model our ADLs, our activities of daily living. So those self-care skills that a lot of our loved ones have challenges with, brushing our hair, brushing our teeth, our dogs love to do those things. My dog loves to have his teeth brushed. So if I can model that behavior with the dog, it may translate to better success with my child brushing their teeth as well. Um, so that's when we can also get the dog involved in those things. So some of our loved ones have medical equipment that they may need to use that they don't like to use. So a big example that I often give is if you have a child that wears AFOs, a lot of our kids don't like to put on those braces. They feel uncomfortable or they know some of their friends don't have to wear them, so they don't understand why. And there might be a lot of resistance in your home to using them. Well, if your service dog is the one that brings them to your child, we have a lot more success in getting your child to wear them throughout the day because now it's not mom asking me, now it's my dog. So they can help with that motivation as well. Were there any other questions other than that? And then, of course, whoever was asking about the tasks, I hope that it gave a little bit of information to help there to kind of get the ball rolling in your mind of what might be helpful to your family.
So you answered the one before, so thank you. And then one of the participants wanted to share, thank you for sharing your story because it sounds very similar, like my child's story. And it's the same reason she's looking for a service dog. So she's thankful for your
Oh,
participation.
awesome. So one of the other things that I just thought of too is our dogs can really help in some of the therapy appointments that our kids go to as well. So some of the creative ways that our dogs are used in occupational therapy, because our dogs have collars that come on and off frequently throughout the day, we're able to help teach some of those fine motor skills with taking the dog's collar off in creative ways. Our dogs will sit and so some of our kids that might be working with like those fastener boards, those are static and sometimes boring to them. And so there's not a lot of motivation. We can put a very similar board on a vest for the dog. And then they're no longer having to sit at a board and learn how to do buttons and zippers. Now they're interacting with their dogs. So we get a lot more motivation that way. Our dogs can also assist in helping with speech because they do work on verbal commands. And so our dogs can motivate our loved ones to really increase some verbal speech. And some of our dogs can respond to commands through an AAC as well. So if your child is nonverbal but uses an AAC, that would be an easy transition for them. Or also potentially pairing. Our dogs are going to come home with you with verbal commands, but if you're a household that uses ASL, you may be able to start pairing the verbal command with ASL, and the dog will eventually pick up on the ASL and then follow the commands just with sign language.
And then I got a question. Does Canine Companions train to help type 1 diabetes?
We do not. So alert dogs are a different type of service dog than what Canine Companions can provide. If you are looking for an alert dog for either diabetes or seizures, we would recommend that you try to find an organization that is part of Assistance Dogs International, ADI. That's an international organization that kind of vets the quality of a service dog organization. So, if you go through someone who is certified with ADI, that they're going to be a reputable organization for your service dog. Now, some of our clients, and I know this was a question that came in via email ahead of the webinar, some of our clients have more than one type of need. And so if I had a loved one who needs possibly the type of dog we were talking about today, as well as a diabetic alert dog, can the dog be trained in multiple tasks? Possibly, yes. Canine Companions will not train for the diabetic or seizure alert dogs, but you may end up having a dog that kind of picks up on that in your household. My recommendation, if you need two very different types of work from a dog, is to pick whichever one is the most important for your family and select a dog that can meet those skills first, and then possibly see if the dog can pick up on some ancillary skills to help in other areas as well.
So another question is, do they assist for does level 1 diagnosis qualify for service dog as well?
Absolutely. So, and even if there's not necessarily a formal diagnosis of autism, or any other formal diagnosis, we're not, so whereas regional center, you have to have specific diagnostic criteria that are met to be eligible for services. For a service dog through Canine Companions, it's not a list of diagnoses that will qualify. Our uh, our organization wants to provide a service dog to any individual with a disability that feels that they may benefit from a service dog. So, especially when we're talking about our hearing dog program, we have a lot of clients that have been resistant to apply because they say things like, I don't know if my hearing loss is great enough. I don't know if I'm deaf enough to qualify for a dog. I think that someone who has more hearing loss than I do may need a dog more than I do. So I'm not going to apply because I don't want to take that dog from someone else. Our organization, though, if you feel that your disability is impactful enough that a dog could help and you want a service dog, please apply. So the same would carry over for autism. Just because you've received a level 1 diagnosis, as we all know, if we have loved ones that are autistic, a level 1 diagnosis may have some areas of need that are moderate to severe as well, just as someone who's diagnosed with level 3 may have some areas in their lives that they excel in. And so if there are places in your life that a service dog could help, please apply.
And then is having another dog in the household along with a service dog okay?
Absolutely. So there are, depending on if you have a lot of dogs already in your household, that may be a problem. But if you have one or two dogs or a cat or even some, if you have exotic animals, they may ask a few more questions just to make sure that your other animal, as well as the dogs, would be safe around each other. But dogs and cats, for sure, no problem at all.
And let's see, I think that was our last question. Yep, that was our last question. So if anybody has any more, feel free to add them into the Q&A. And
I'm going to
Michelle,
go
you.
ahead and I'm going to advance
Oh,
as well
okay.
to the next slide, which unfortunately takes the cute pictures off the screen. But that gives you my contact information as well. As I said at the beginning, please feel free to email me, send me a text message, give me a call. I'd be happy to chat about dogs, especially if you have questions, if service dogs really are something, whether from Canine Companions or another organization or owner trained. Um, if your uh if your loved one is also a regional center client and you are looking at a service dog, there's not funding for training, but there is funding for the ongoing care of the working dog, and so be happy to chat through that on an individual basis too.
Awesome. Thank you for providing us with your email and your phone number.
Absolutely. I think I
Yeah.
just want to double check um because I know that there were a couple questions that came in via email, and I want to make sure that I feel like I
Oh, those two.
answered them.
And while you're doing that, I put in the webinar chat. I know it's really hard to take surveys, but the only way for us to improve, besides my technical issue before we started, please fill out the brief survey. It helps us know what other things we can do and provide to our families. Michelle, was really an honor. I learned a lot from you. I didn't even know about mini horses. That's really cute. And a lot of information that you provided was new information to me. So I totally appreciate you and everybody participating this evening.
A couple of things that I will share that are coming up since we are most of us probably tonight are in the Inland Empire. We do have a couple of things coming up. So first of all, September is National Service Dog Month. And so you may see some events cropping up to promote service dog awareness in the community. Um, we uh, we do have a couple of cities around that are going to do some service dog proclamations. If you'd like to meet Oaken in person, we are going to come to the City of Temecula City Council meeting on September 24th to receive a proclamation from the City of Temecula for service dogs. And I'm hoping to collect a couple other city proclamations along the way as well. But right now, the one that I know we're receiving is in Temecula. And then if I'm obviously in that area, so if you're further out in Riverside County or up in San Bernardino, I apologize that these might be a little bit farther away from you. But we also have an event on September 18th. It's a Wednesday at the French Valley Library, which is in Murrieta in the French Valley area. We're going to do a story time with Oaken at 3:30 in the afternoon, and then also be available for question and answers. And we'll be focusing on service dogs, service dog awareness for individuals with disabilities, as well as to talk to other members of our community who may be interested in volunteering. So that's another big part of Canine Companions. We are a nonprofit organization that works on volunteers, similar to how Autism Society does as well. If you know anyone who's looking for an opportunity to love on a cuddly little puppy for about 1.5 years, we are always looking for puppy raisers. Information can be found on canine.org for that as well. And we actually, one of the cool things we do is we have a lot of college kids who are able to bring puppies with them to college to raise them there as well. We have college raising clubs. And then it's one of the few ways that you can bring a dog with you to a college campus. So just a couple of things to keep in mind.
Can you write in the chat the story time or
Yeah,
the day? They didn't
yeah,
catch.
maybe.
And thank you. Or I can see, do you have a flyer for it?
I don't yet. We're going to be creating a little promo video this week with them of Oaken checking out a book at the library. So they're still working on some of their marketing. They usually do it a month at a time. So they're finishing out their August events right now, and then they'll start promoting that in September.
Awesome. What, they wanted to know what day the story time was. Was it, did you
I'm
say?
typing it right now, September 18th.
Oh, okay. At 3:30.
Yes.
And
There you go.
then, thank you.
Uh-huh.
And then I did have a question come in.
Oh, did I put that in the right place though? I put it in the chat. Was I?
Oh, I'll change it. I'll change it.
Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. Did you state what the cost for training was if not covered? That was the.
Yeah, so for Canine Companions, there's no cost. The individual applying for the dog is never going to be asked for any financial contribution to the dog. However, service dog organizations as a whole, Canine Companions included, will often talk about the cost of a service dog from birth until they're ready to start working is typically about $40,000 to $50,000. So there's a very big financial investment that our organization and our volunteer puppy raisers are putting into those dogs prior to them graduating with us. But the families are from Canine Companions are not required to fundraise or participate in the financial aspect of that. You're of course always welcome to, but it's not a requirement as part of the dog.
Thank you. And any recommendations for owner training if they already have a dog?
So what I will say as far as owner training a dog that you already have, and I'm glad you asked this question because it's something I always mean to bring up, and it slipped my mind today with everything we were talking about. So owner trained service dogs are just as legitimate and have just as much public access rights as an organization trained dog. I would recommend if you were looking to owner train your dog to start with basic obedience and to try to go through a program that knows that basic obedience, such as like a pet store or a local trainer in your area that's going to go through that basic obedience program. From there, to work on those tasks to make that crossover into service work. There are some training organizations that work specifically on training for service dogs that can come. You go out in the community with them, they'll give you some pointers, those sorts of things. However, Canine Companions is specifically breeding for this type of work. We know the history of our dogs. We are selecting our breeders based on temperament, their ability to learn working tasks. Our breeders are kind of the best of the best when we think about a service dog profile. Then they get pulled out for the breeding program. And even with that very intentional and selective breeding and the fact that we are training those dogs from the moment they are born, so they're never treated as a pet first, our graduation rate is about 50 to 60% because the dog each still has a personality and not every dog chooses to work. It is very difficult for a dog to go into a busy environment and make the choice to stay focused on their handler versus everything else in the environment around them. Our dogs go everywhere and they are making very difficult choices for dogs. So while it is entirely possible to owner train a service dog, expect that there may be a lot of hiccups along the way, because if the dog's personality is not suited for service work, they may do very well working tasks in your home and have a very hard time if you take them out into public, into a busy environment.
Thank you for that information.
Yeah.
And
So I
then,
don't want to discourage it, and I don't want you to ever go out and see an owner trained dog and think that dog does not have a right to be here. They absolutely do, but just be prepared that if your dogs, and specifically if this is a dog that has been a pet of yours in the past. So when I talk about that food training with Oaken, if I had a pet dog that's been my family pet for 3 or 4 years and we all fed him table scraps, and now all of a sudden I tell this 4-year-old dog, hey, buddy, by the way, now you're going to be a service dog and you can't eat from the table anymore. That dog's not going to understand. So if you're able to own or train from birth, you'll have a greater chance of success than if you were to try to rescue or to take a family pet that's already been living life as a pet and now all of a sudden is not.
And then, do you know of some tasks that the service dog can perform with elopers?
So one of the things that we do with Canine Companions is we'll show families how to have 2 leashes. So the adult facilitator will have the main working leash that has the controlled collar on the dog. And then your child, I'm assuming we're talking about a child that's eloping, may clip a second leash onto the flat collar of the dog. And then, so instead of having to hold mom or dad's hand everywhere we go and hope that they don't run away, now they're holding on to and walking their dog. It's not a perfect solution. It doesn't work for everyone, but it is something that when we tie motivation to the behavior that we're trying to elicit, I don't want you to elope and run away into unsafe places. But now you're motivated, not because I'm telling you not to, but because now it's not about telling you not to run away. It's about telling you, can you help me walk your dog? So that's one way that it can help with eloping. And then another way is if you're already seated, having that dog be able to provide that deep pressure, that calming place that we're staying here now. We don't need to get up and go anywhere. We can feel safe right here.
Thank you. And then
Yeah.
the last question, thank you for staying over, is the specific breed. You said lab and golden retriever.
Yep. So for canine companions, those are the breeds that we use. Because we know the lineage, we're able to know like the percentages of everything. So Oaken happens to be 15/16 lab and 1/16 golden retriever. We do have some dogs in our program that are full labs or full goldens. Most of our dogs are a cross between the two.
Awesome. And
But
then,
service dogs can be any type of breed. You can have itty bitty tiny dogs that are doing service work, and you can have giant Great Danes that are doing service work as well.
and then the last one, it's not a question, but a statement. And I'll have you guys connect. She can get you a Woldemar City, can get you in with the Woldemar City to get a proclamation, and congratulations to Oakland receiving one for Temecula. So
Awesome.
Candy, feel free to take down Michelle's information so that way you guys can connect and discuss that further.
Yeah, that would be perfect. Thank you.
And we're done. We're good. We
Awesome.
answered all of our questions. Thank you again for joining us this evening, and her contact is on there, her email and her phone number. And if you guys have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to Michelle or myself. I'm so sorry I didn't even introduce myself. Melissa with the Autism Society. I'm the Senior Research Specialist. Happy to have you guys on again this evening. Check out our event calendars. We have a lot of fun events coming up in September, in person and virtual. And then that's it for this evening. Thank you again, Michelle, and everybody for joining, and I hope you guys have a wonderful night.
Thank you. If anyone's still here and you're looking for something to watch tonight, check out Netflix. There's a special Inside the Mind of a Dog. There's a lot of Canine Companions dogs on there. About half of the documentary is on our dogs. As a side note, if you're looking for, again, some motivation to listen to watch it, Rob Lowe narrates it. So,
Oh, that's cool.
yeah.
I'll look into
And it
it.
just came out about 2 weeks ago. So,
I'll have to look into that one.
yeah.
Well, thank you. I appreciate all the information. All right. Well, you have a good evening, and thanks again.
All right. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.